47 years of television interviews, one sentence, and the man who had survived every room he ever walked into could not survive this one. Nobody in the Ed Sullivan Theater that January night knew what Letterman had placed inside the folder on his desk before the cameras went live. Not the producers, not the warm-up act, not the network executives watching the feed from their offices upstairs. Certainly not Donald Trump, who settled into the guest chair the way he always settled into guest chairs. Wide, claiming, certain, and who had done this particular show enough times to believe he understood its architecture completely. By the time the sentence arrived, he was already standing. By the time the cameras cut to commercial, he was in the corridor, moving fast, not answering the two staffers trying to keep pace behind him. But the sentence itself, the one that preceded all of that, lasted 4 seconds. 4 seconds of David Letterman's voice, level and unhurried, landing in a studio that had just finished laughing and was not prepared for what came next. To understand how 4 seconds dismantled 40 years of careful construction, you have to begin at the beginning of the night, when everything still looked exactly like it was supposed to. January 2015. The Late Show is in its final months. Letterman has announced his retirement, and the cultural conversation has turned reflective. The retrospectives are being written, the career-spanning clip packages are being assembled. The question of legacy is sitting open in the air around every interview he does. Trump arrives as he has arrived for every previous appearance, preceded by his security detail, trailed by an assistant carrying 2 phones and a leather portfolio, entering the backstage corridor with the forward-leaning walk of a man who experiences stillness as a competitive disadvantage. He has been on this show before. He knows the desk, knows the chair, knows the rhythm of the exchange, knows that Letterman will needle him about the hair, and he will laugh, and the audience will laugh, and the needle will never land deep enough to draw anything real. He has built that understanding across years of appearances. Tonight, he is counting on it. The infrastructure of their history together is the trap. The taping begins at the standard time. The monologue runs. The first guest segment fills its slot. Then Trump crosses the stage to the familiar sound of the band playing something brassy, waves to the audience with his right hand raised at the precise angle that says, "I know you love this," and takes the guest chair with the practiced ease of a man sitting down in a room he considers his by prior arrangement. Letterman leans back. The first exchange is warm. The rhythm is exactly what Trump expected. The hair joke comes in the first 90 seconds, lands cleanly. Trump absorbs it the way he always absorbs it, with the particular smile of someone who has decided to treat being mocked as evidence of relevance. The audience is with him. The room is comfortable. The infrastructure is holding. Letterman asks about The Apprentice. Trump answers at length about ratings. Letterman asks about Atlantic City. A gentle probe, the kind he has thrown before, the kind Trump has deflected before, with the businessman's standard vocabulary of restructuring and market conditions and decisions that made sense at the time. Tonight, Trump begins the deflection. The language is correct. The structure is familiar. The answer is already 4 sentences in when Letterman does the thing he has not done in any previous interview, the thing that no preparation could have anticipated because it requires a host who has decided in the final months of a 47-year career that he no longer has any reason to stay inside the lines that kept the room comfortable. Letterman does not ask a follow-up question. He waits for Trump to finish the sentence he is building. He waits through the clause about market conditions and through the clause about decisions made with the best available information and through the subordinate clause that is functioning as a landing pad, a soft place for the answer to settle without being examined further. He waits through all of it. And then, in the silence that follows, the silence where the affirmation is supposed to come, the nod, the pivot to the next topic, the continuation of the rhythm, he says the one sentence instead. "I know a man who lost everything in those casinos, Donald, and I want to ask you something, and I want you to answer it like it was your money." The studio doesn't gasp. It does something slower and more significant. It goes quiet in the way that rooms go quiet when the rules have just been changed and nobody has been given the new ones yet. The laughter from the hair joke is still faintly present in the room's memory. 3 minutes gone, close enough that the contrast between that warmth and this stillness is a physical thing. The air in the Ed Sullivan Theater changes the way air changes before weather. Not temperature, not humidity, but pressure. The sense of the atmosphere rearranging itself around something that cannot be ignored. Trump's body receives the sentence before his face does. His right hand, which has been gesturing in the fluid patterns of a man conducting his own narrative, stops mid-arc. The fingers hold their position for a half second, Not closed into a fist, not open and flat, but frozen in the exact configuration they were in when the sentence arrived, like a photograph taken at the precise moment of impact. His jaw shifts, his eyes, which have been moving in their usual rhythm, Letterman, camera, audience, middle distance, go still on Letterman's face and stay there. Letterman does not look away. This is the quality that 23 years of watching them together could not have prepared anyone for. Letterman's stillness. He has always been a physical comedian in the interview chair, leaning and gesturing and using the full range of his body to punctuate exchanges. Tonight, he is completely still, hands flat on the desk, shoulders level, the expression of a man who has asked a question he intends to receive an answer to and is prepared to wait for as long as it takes, not as a power display, but as a simple, complete commitment to the thing he has just said. The infrastructure of every previous interview has been built on Letterman's willingness to move on. Tonight, he has decided not to move on, and the room can feel exactly what that decision cost Trump and exactly what it returns to the man making it. Trump says something about business. The words form correctly, but the sentence doesn't complete its own logic. It begins in one direction and arrives somewhere slightly different. The way a sentence arrives when the mind constructing it has been interrupted at the foundation level by something it did not budget for. He says something about how every businessman faces losses. He says something about how the people who worked in those casinos had jobs, had paychecks, which is a different thing from what Letterman said, and a different thing from what Letterman asked. And in the gap between what was asked and what is being answered, the entire history of every managed interview Trump has ever given is suddenly and completely visible. Letterman lets the answer finish. Then he says it again. Not the same words, the same question, but I'm asking about this man specifically, and I'm asking if you think he got what was fair. 4 seconds of silence. Trump stands up. The movement is not explosive. It is not the theatrical storm-off of someone performing anger for an audience. It is something more unsettling. The movement of a man who has made a precise calculation that remaining in the chair is more dangerous than leaving it, and who has reached that calculation quickly enough that the decision to stand happens before the face has fully committed to the expression that would justify it. He is standing before the audience, understands why he is standing. He is already adjusting his jacket, already half-turned toward the wings, already producing the language of departure, something about a great show, something about this being terrific, something about Dave being a very talented guy, while his body is moving in the direction of the exit, with the focused velocity of someone who has decided that the room behind him is no longer safe. Letterman watches him go. He does not stand. He does not call after him. He sits in the interview chair with his hands still flat on the desk and watches Donald Trump cross his stage and disappear into the wings, trailed by 2 staffers who are moving fast and looking at their phones at the same time. Then he turns back to the camera. The expression on his face is not triumph, and it is not surprise. It is the expression of a man who asked the question he intended to ask and received the answer he expected to receive, just not in the form of words. The audience is completely silent for 3 full seconds after Trump exits the frame. Then a sound begins that is not applause and is not laughter, but is something between them. A release, a collective exhale dressed in sound, the noise a room makes when it has been holding something it didn't know it was holding and has been given permission to put it down. It builds slowly, the way real reactions always build, without the sharp leading edge of cued response. It reaches something that can be called applause by the time Letterman looks back at the camera. But the camera operator in the center position, the one who should have followed Trump to the wings, has kept his shot on the empty guest chair for 6 seconds before cutting back to Letterman's face. Not because he was instructed to, because the empty chair is the story, and he knew it. The clip is on the internet before the credits roll, not the full segment. That follows within hours. The clip. 17 seconds. Trump standing. The jacket adjustment, the departure language delivered to a room he is already leaving, the wings swallowing him, the empty chair, Letterman's face. 17 seconds that require no caption, no narration, no chyron explaining significance. The infrastructure of what just happened is visible in the geometry of the empty chair, the ghost of a man who sat down intending to manage a room and stood up because he could not. By morning, the clip has 9 million views. By the following evening, it has more than 20. Letterman gives an interview to New York Magazine in which he says he wishes he could have smacked Trump around more across the years, that he always felt Trump could take a punch, and so he never threw the real one. He does not say that January 2015 was the real one. He doesn't need to. Everyone who watched the chair go empty already knows. Trump's truth social post arrives the following September, 8 months later, triggered not by the interview but by Letterman calling him an authoritarian in a separate context. The post calls Letterman very highly overrated and says his ratings were never very good. It notes that he looks like hell, but credits him for at least knowing when to quit. The post does not mention January 2015. It does not mention the question about the man who lost everything. It does not mention the chair. 8 months of silence on those 4 seconds, broken only by a post about hair and ratings that mentions everything except the thing it was written in response to. The interview still has almost 1 million views. People still find it for the first time. Still pause it at the moment the hand stops mid-gesture. Still watch the chair go empty and feel the particular chill of watching someone's infrastructure fail in real time. Not the loud failure of a public collapse, but the quiet failure of a man calculating that the only safe move left is the door. The question Letterman asked never received an answer. Not that night, not in the 8 months between the interview and the Truth Social post, not in the years since. The man who lost everything in those casinos is not named in any post or statement or rebuttal. The infrastructure that was supposed to carry the weight of that silence is still standing, technically, but everyone who watched the chair go empty knows exactly what it is holding and exactly how long it can hold it before the whole thing comes down. Subscribe right now and turn on notifications. The next confrontation is already building, and once you see what's coming, you'll understand why silence is always louder than power.